The sentence didn't come with anger. That's what made it dangerous. Until you apologize to your sister, you're suspended. My father said it like a policy decision. Calm, controlled, final. As if my life were a membership he could pause until I complied. Not grounded, not punished, suspended. The word echoed in my head as I sat there, hands folded in my lap, staring at the wood grain of the dining table I'd grown up around. The room smelled like coffee and buttered toast, warm, familiar, painfully ordinary for a moment that quietly split my life in two. My sister sat to his right, eyes fixed on her plate. She didn't need to look at me. She never did. This wasn't about conversation. It was about hierarchy. I didn't interrupt him, didn't defend myself, didn't explain what actually happened. That alone should have warned them something was different. My name is Rowan Hale. I was 28, working as an operations analyst, single, financially independent, and still, somehow, treated like a child who could be corrected into obedience. In our family, conflict followed a script. My sister got hurt. My father decided why, and I apologized, always me. She's sensitive, he continued, folding his hands together like a mediator who'd already ruled. You know how she takes things. This wouldn't have escalated if you'd just been more careful. Careful, with my words, with my tone, with my existence. My mother stayed silent, eyes down, stirring her coffee long after it needed stirring. Silence was how she survived my father's decisions, by never standing in front of them. You're not welcome here, he added, almost gently, until you make this right. No family dinners, no holidays. We'll talk again once you've apologized. Suspended from my own family. I waited for the familiar rush of panic. The instinct to fix things, smooth things over, restore balance at my own expense. That reflex had ruled my entire childhood. But it didn't come. Instead, something settled. A realization so quiet, it almost slipped past me. This wasn't discipline, it was leverage. He wasn't asking me to reflect, he was demanding surrender. I looked up then, met his eyes for the first time since he started speaking. All right, I said, just one word, calm, neutral. The table went still. He nodded, satisfied. Already imagining me coming back in a day or two, contrite, apologetic, ready to restore order. My sister exhaled softly, relief flickering across her face. Victory, assumed. But all right didn't mean what they thought it meant. I stood, pushing my chair back slowly. The scrape of the legs against the floor was loud in the quiet room. My father frowned. "Where are you going?" he asked. I reached for my jacket, my keys. "I'll respect your decision," I said evenly. "I just won't be negotiating my place here anymore." My sister finally looked up then. Something unreadable crossed her face. Confusion, maybe, or the first crack of doubt. They believed suspension meant waiting. Waiting to be reinstated. Waiting to be forgiven. They didn't understand that when you tell someone they don't belong, sometimes the most powerful response is to leave, not in anger, not in tears, but with clarity. And once you walk away like that, there's no appeal process. Leaving the house felt unreal, not dramatic, not explosive, just quiet. The front door closed behind me with a soft click, the kind of sound that shouldn't carry weight, but did. I stood on the porch for a second longer than necessary, keys cold in my palm, waiting for something to stop me. A voice, footsteps, regret. Nothing came. That's when it hit me. They really believed I'd be back. I drove home on autopilot, past streets I'd memorized as a teenager, past the grocery store where my father once lectured me for embarrassing him by crying, past the park where Mara learned early that tears could bend adults like gravity. By the time I reached my apartment, my phone had already lit up. Mom. Let's not make this bigger than it needs to be. Dad, this is temporary if you handle it maturely. Mara, nothing. Temporary, maturely. Those words had followed me my entire life. Growing up, apologies weren't about accountability. They were about restoring comfort. Not mine, theirs. Whenever Mara felt slighted, overwhelmed, or simply contradicted, the solution was automatic. I apologized so everyone else could relax. If I questioned it, I was escalating. If I resisted, I was making it harder than it had to be. If I complied, things went back to normal, which meant silence, distance, and the quiet understanding that I would always be the one who bent. I used to think that was love, or at least the closest thing to it I was allowed. That night, alone in my apartment, I didn't cry. I unpacked my bag, made dinner, answered work emails, lived my life the way I always had, without them in it. The difference was this time it was intentional. 2 days later, the suspension expanded. I found out through a cousin that my name had been removed from the family group chat, for now. My mother stopped calling. My father sent one final message. This stalemate is unnecessary. Apologize and we can move forward. Forward. As if forward meant returning to the same small space I'd always been confined to. I stared at the message for a long time before responding. I am moving forward, I wrote. Just not in the direction you want. He didn't reply. Instead, the consequences began, the quiet kind. Invitations stopped coming. My birthday passed without acknowledgement. A holiday arrived and went. And for the first time, no one asked if I was coming. The silence was meant to punish me. But something unexpected happened. Without the constant background noise of managing their emotions, my life grew lighter. I slept better. I stopped rehearsing conversations in my head. I realized how much energy I'd spent trying to remain acceptable. And I started noticing things I'd ignored before, like how my father's authority depended entirely on my compliance. How Mara's fragility only worked when someone else carried the blame. How my absence didn't break the family. It just exposed the imbalance. They weren't missing me. They were missing control. A week later, I ran into an old family friend at the grocery store. She hesitated when she saw me, then leaned in. "I heard you're on a break," she said carefully. I smiled, polite but distant. "That's one way to put it." She lowered her voice. "Your dad says you're being stubborn." I nodded. "He would." She paused, studying my face, then said something I hadn't expected. "Well, good for you." That was the first crack. Because when you walk away quietly, people start filling the silence with their own questions. And the story my family had always told, the one where I was difficult, emotional, unreasonable, didn't hold up as well without me there to play the role. They thought suspension would teach me a lesson. What it actually taught me was how peaceful my life could be without asking for permission to exist. The first thing they lost wasn't me. It was the story. Without my presence to absorb tension, small cracks started forming, the kind no one could blame on me anymore. It showed up in sideways comments first. A cousin texted late one night, "Hey, just checking in. Things feel weird lately." An aunt left a voicemail, her voice overly casual. "Your dad seems stressed. He keeps saying you'll come around, as if I were orbiting them, not moving away." I didn't respond. Silence, I'd learned, was a language they understood too late. A month passed, then 2. My father missed my absence during moments he couldn't control. When relatives asked why I wasn't at a birthday dinner, he said, "Rowan's taking space." When pressed, "She's being stubborn." When challenged, "It's a misunderstanding." Each version sounded thinner than the last. Because without me present, Mara had no contrast. Her moods weren't sensitive anymore. They were volatile. Her conflicts couldn't be smoothed over with my apology. Her tears no longer resulted in instant resolution. And my father? He grew sharper, more impatient. His authority depended on friction, and without me, there was nowhere for it to land. I heard about it through fragments. A cousin who left dinner early, an uncle who declined another family gathering, a family friend who gently suggested therapy, and was never invited back. The suspension was supposed to teach me humility. Instead, it revealed how much effort it took to keep everything balanced on my compliance. Then came the call. It was my mother, late one evening, voice softer than usual. "He's not sleeping," she said quietly. "He thinks you're punishing him." I almost laughed, not out of cruelty, but disbelief. "I didn't punish anyone," I said. "I just didn't apologize." She sighed. "You know how he is." I did. That was the problem. "Is this really worth it?" she asked. I looked around my apartment, calm, orderly, mine, my life uninterrupted. "Yes," I said, "it is." She didn't argue. She couldn't, because she knew what I knew now too. If an apology is demanded to restore peace, then peace was never real to begin with. A week later, my father finally reached out directly. Not angry, not apologetic, measured. "This has gone far enough," he said. "You've made your point." I stayed quiet, letting the weight of that sentence settle. "My point?" I asked. "You're proving you can hold out," he replied. "But families don't work like this." "No," I said. "They work when everyone's dignity is optional, but yours." He didn't like that. "You're tearing us apart," he said. That was when it became clear. They didn't want reconciliation. They wanted restoration. The old order, the old roles, the old version of me. But that version didn't exist anymore. "I'm not suspended," I told him calmly. "I'm done negotiating my worth." His breath caught, not in grief, but frustration. "So what happens now?" he asked. I thought about it for a moment. "Now," I said, "you live with the consequences of your ultimatum." And for the first time in my life, I heard something unfamiliar in his silence. Uncertainty. They expected me to come back. That was the mistake they never stopped making. In their version of the story, I would eventually miss them enough to comply. I would apologize, not because I was wrong, but because belonging had always required concession. They believed time would soften me the way it always had. Instead, time clarified things. Weeks turned into months. Holidays passed quietly. My phone stayed mostly still. The silence wasn't dramatic anymore. It was normal. And with each day that passed, the urgency they felt grew louder, while mine disappeared completely. The final attempt came without warning. My father showed up at my apartment one afternoon, standing in the hallway like a man who expected the door to open automatically. When it didn't, he knocked. Once, sharp and impatient. I opened it slowly. He looked older. Smaller somehow. Authority doesn't age well when it's no longer reinforced. "We need to talk," he said. I stepped aside, not inviting him in, not stopping him either. He stood just inside the doorway, glancing around as if searching for signs of collapse. There were none. "You've made your point," he said. "This has gone on long enough." I waited. "Mara's been struggling," he continued. "Your mother's upset. This family isn't meant to function without you." That was the closest thing to honesty I'd ever heard from him. "You suspended me," I said calmly. "You told me I didn't belong until I apologized for something I didn't do." He shifted. "I was trying to keep the peace." "No," I said gently. "You were enforcing it." He frowned, unused to conversations where his words weren't treated as conclusions. "So what now?" he asked. I took a breath. Not to steady myself, I didn't need to, but because endings deserve clarity. Now nothing, I said. You made a choice. I respected it. His jaw tightened. Families forgive. They do, I agreed, but they don't demand humiliation as the price. For a moment, he looked like he might argue. Then he seemed to realize something. Not that he was wrong, but that he was no longer in control. I can't fix this if you won't cooperate, he said. I nodded. That's the first true thing you've said. He left without another word, and that was it. No final explosion, no reconciliation montage, no apology waiting at the end of the story. Just distance, clean, intentional, and earned. I didn't lose my family that day. I lost the version of family that required me to disappear in order to belong. And in return, I gained something I'd never had before. Peace without permission. I still think about them sometimes. Not with anger, not even with sadness. Just with the understanding that some systems don't collapse. They simply lose the person holding them together. They suspended me to force an apology. Instead, they taught me a lesson they never meant to give. Walking away isn't dramatic. It's decisive. And once you stop negotiating your worth, there's nothing left to argue about.